Starting with me. My name's St. Clair Newbern IV, and I am an entrepreneur, investor, miner. Got into it from the energy consulting business that we've run for over a decade. In terms of the greatest challenge facing the industry today, I would say Josh should answer that. And then, no, I'm just kidding. Greatest opportunity, I mean, I got, my interest came from recognizing the correlation between energy and, how the mining space would evolve. And so, personally, I think one of the most interesting opportunities is developing solutions where you can solve the energy issues related to moving to industrial scale mining.
I'm Luke Dashjr, maintainer of BFG Miner, and I work a lot on the Bitcoin core code for mining especially. Probably one of the biggest challenges today is keeping mining decentralized. Opportunities, there aren't very many these days since Avalon 1 first batch. There hasn't been really any ASIC that's really even broken even. But.
I would agree on the decentralization being a major issue.
I'm Marco Streng. I'm CEO of Genesis Mining, and we are actually providing, we are the biggest script hash power provider at the moment, and directly the opportunity I see, especially in the cryptocurrency economy, is that where there is a variety of different coins, and companies like Genesis Mining are offering the miners to feel free to mine the coins they like, and they have the opportunity to just go on for that coin who they think would be profitable. And also for the crypto coin producer, it's a huge opportunity because they can design the cryptocurrencies and give them economic features that could be really interesting for the whole economy.
And a challenge?
Well, the challenge is obviously, I think there may become some regulation. There got to be some government maybe saying, well, we got to regulate that. But I'm much more optimistic, obviously, in this.
Yeah. I'm Daniel Krawisz. I'm a founder of the Satoshi Nakamoto Institute. I've only done a little bit of mining. I'm primarily here as an economist. So my greatest challenge, I think, is increasing the block size beyond 1 megabyte. And greatest opportunity is just everything.
My name is Josh Zerlan with Butterfly Labs. And we manufacture the mining hardware. And one of the biggest challenges, at least in the hardware space, is keeping up with the pace of technology, both from a manufacturer's standpoint and from the miner's standpoint. Everyone has to get on the treadmill. Fortunately, that's slowing down, which brings into the biggest challenge. Is one of the biggest challenges we faced, and I think a lot of people face in this arena, is the plethora of opportunity and knowing when and where and what to grab and how to make that choice. It's a great problem to have, but it's still a problem when you're faced with so much choice and opportunity in the Bitcoin space.
Second question I wanted to ask, and we have a large panel, so I'm just going to ask the people that feel most called to ask to do that. It's a question about risk management. What are some of the solutions that you see for internal risk management as, let's say, mining company? And what are some of the tools that you might offer that might be useful for the buying public to help them manage their risk?
I'll mention one thing. If you're talking about for miners, there's lots of tools out there that you can use to help analyze what's going on with your equipment and manage the risk. Obviously, the worst thing to happen is for you to have a bunch of downtime and not know about it. And in order to be profitable, you have to have more miners. So it becomes increasingly complex to figure out what each of them are doing. So risk management can be accomplished through good tools, which there's not a whole lot of them out there. We're actually building one tool set, Mining Monitor, and I think that's something to look at.
And for the bigger companies, taking care and think about mitigating the risk, there are some insurance company who offer to insure big mining facilities. And also, there are actually systems who detect if in case of a burn, they detect it, and you can erase the fire without destroying the hardware in that way. I mean, if there is fire in the farm, that's the worst case. But totally, people want to be secure also in these kinds of cases and don't want to destroy the whole farm. And there are solutions already for this.
So another aspect of the risk management for security, which we've seen with Mt. Gox, or anybody that handles your Bitcoins, you need to, as a developer or as an operator of a service, you need to really manage your risk in terms of what you expose the Bitcoins to, for example, your hot wallet or your cold wallet, and ways to help. You need good coding practices, which we saw with Mt. Gox not following any of those. You really need to be cognizant of security, and you need to hire somebody who knows security and has a security background and has a track record. I've seen a lot of people think they are good at security, and so they go ahead with what they think are good practices, and they don't account for the edge cases, which is where most of the hacks come from.
Well, don't trust any institutions, look into open transactions and voting pools as a way of avoiding trusting institutions at all.
A risk a lot of miners aren't really necessarily aware of is that if you're mining on a pool, the pool could potentially be performing double spends and you would never even know about it, or other different kinds of attacks on the network. So one of the features that BFG Miner has and is planning to expand on is the ability for you to run your own Bitcoin daemon that has the policies you understand and monitor for these things and alert you and potentially switch to using a different pool if it detects anything like that.
Thanks, that was really interesting. Honoring the title of this panel, let's talk a little bit about the future of Bitcoin mining. First question, is Bitcoin mining, is it only about higher performance per chip, or are there also other factors in play in terms of performance? What are your thoughts about that?
So this is an area we are very cognizant of. The most important factor in the past has been your hash rate. Everybody wants higher hash rate, doesn't matter what it costs. Going forward, this year, we will probably see what we're referring to internally as a chip glut, where there's going to be a lot of hashing power available on the network. We've already seen the difficulty spikes at 30% per 2 weeks or every 10 days. And what that is going to mean is power efficiency is going to be very important. Because if you are paying twice as much for your power, you're making half as much than the next guy. So the hash rate is not going to be nearly as important this year as your power efficiency.
Yeah. And additionally, there comes the fact that the ones who are more power efficient can survive longer in the market because they can mine more and longer until the electricity costs are more than the income per mining. And that also is a reason for taking care of the electricity efficiency and also being able to be longer in the market.
I agree on the energy being a huge component, and obviously that's what got us into it. We thought it would, be more of an issue than it has so far, but it looks like it's definitely going to be that way. And also, I don't know how many people in the room have gone to a standard data center and tried to make a deal to install a bunch of Bitcoin mining hardware, but it's not something that they're real interested in doing. So as things scale up, it's going to be interesting how people figure out or how people deal with the need to warehouse more and more equipment in, because the current infrastructure in the data centers, they don't want it. They don't want liquid cooling, and so you've got to find a unique solution if you're going to expand.
What about going forward? Well, no, let's talk about the decentralization, because that's a question that's on many people's lips. Like, will Bitcoin mining remain decentralized? Is monopolization something we should fear? What are your thoughts about that?
So this is actually something I touch on quite a bit and try to educate people on. Right now, the Bitcoin network is very centralized. The top 12 pools are the only miners on the network, and they control 98% of the hash rate. If you are connecting to a pool, you're not actually mining. Unless in the edge cases of BFG miner, where you can massage that a little bit. Most of the miners, if you're connecting to a pool, you're not actually mining. The pool is mining, and you're supplying hash rate to that pool to mine. So whatever the pool operator wants to do with that mining, as Luke implied, they could do double spins or anything else. If they want to reject transactions that you may want to accept, you don't have control over that. So there is no decentralization of mining currently. As we move forward into the ASIC era, where people do more solo mining, the large companies, we will see more decentralization than we currently have now.
Well, the advantage of a mining pool is that it spreads the risk around, so your rewards are less variant. You get a steady income. So really, for that purpose, it's really best if the mining pool is as big as possible, because then it spreads the risk most easily. But the problem of you can't have one organization that has control of a large part of the network. That violates Bitcoin's security assumptions. So what people should, well, it's theoretically possible to separate the role of setting policy from spreading the risk. It should be possible for individual miners to prove to a centralized pool that they are mining correctly without allowing the pool owner to know what policy they are implementing using something like a zero-knowledge proof. But I really don't know how feasible this would be presently. So if anybody has any ideas on this, I would like to hear about it.
It's essentially what the goal of GPT is. It doesn't require zero-knowledge proof because when you find a block, it's going to be published on the network anyway. So everyone's going to see what the results are.
So you only provide the rewards after the block is discovered. Is that what you're saying? Well, I'll ask you about it later.
Since everybody knows what you're mining in the blocks, it doesn't matter if you tell your pool that as well.
Okay.
So the separation of policy and low variance is something that's already in the works.
Okay, good. Well, he's my favorite company right now.
Final question, and then we'll open it up for the audience. Thoughts about the altcoin space? What about it? Will we see ASICs there too? What's the future of that?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna say something about that. Well, I think the technology of ASICs, we're gonna see them, and there are already ASICs being shipped. Some people already own them. What is probably true is that the effect of ASIC miner in the script economy is not that as the ASIC miner in the Bitcoin world. But anyway, of course, they probably will be more efficient than GPUs. People will go away from GPUs maybe, and will discover the ASIC technology. But in the altcoin space, there are two ways actually. I mean, the ASIC first that are not that a milestone as the ASIC miners in Bitcoin, and then you also have regarding the hash rate, you have a lot of alternative currencies, and if you have script hash power, you can always decide to choose to switch the altcoin you are mining. So if one coin loses profitability because the difficulty increases too much, you just switch to another one that is profitable, and so you actually have a larger space. You have to take probably the sum of all difficulties of all the altcoins, and there is, I think, this time of exploding of hash rate to be really influential, so that the whole alt currency is going to be less profitable. The whole alt currency space will take much longer. Will take much longer than in the SHA-256 world.
Yeah, I basically agree with that. And one of the reasons for that is the performance delta, or the performance difference between a GPU and a script ASIC is much smaller than it is with an SHA-256 ASIC. So when you are looking at manufacturing the ASIC or moving on to the next generation or a lower node, it doesn't necessarily make financial sense because you won't have as big a market. People will still stick with GPUs because they'll still be viable compared to the GPUs being completely unviable in the SHA-256 space. So you won't have as big a market to sell to, but it will cost just as much to develop. So I agree. I don't think we'll see the rapid pace of development that we saw with the SHA-256 ASICs.
I think the only thing holding the script ASICs back really is the market cap of the script coins. I think as they get developed further, people are going to realize that, yes, you can have an ASIC for any algorithm, and they're going to realize that really the ideal is to just use the algorithm where you can get the ASICs for the highest efficiency for the best price, and probably things will start moving back closer to the SHA-256 with new altcoins.
Thank you. Any questions from the audience?
Oh, wait, I didn't finish.
Sorry.
The problem with altcoins is that they're actually unsustainable as an investment because a larger network is superior to a smaller one in currencies. So Bitcoin is always going to be a superior investment to the altcoins in the long run. And in general, among competition among currencies, you would expect in the end one currency to win out over all of the other ones. So I think in the future we'll see the proportion of mining that comes from altcoins to be getting smaller and smaller relative to Bitcoin.
Okay. Any questions from the audience? Yep.
What do you think of multi-switching pools that switch between different coins, and how do you think that'll affect the future of both script mining and SHA-256?
By the way, is everybody hearing the question, or should it be repeated in the microphone? No problems? Yeah. There is a mic there. Okay. If possible, yeah. Could you just repeat the question?
What do you think of multi-switching pools that switch between different altcoins or Bitcoin's SHA-256 coins, and how do you think they're going to affect the future of both algorithms?
Well, first, of course, is they will accelerate the effect of hash power being deployed on one coin. Because if they grow and they decide to mine this one coin, they all and they get larger. They switch a lot of hash rate to one coin, and therefore affect the difficulty of this one coin dramatically. So we're gonna have, if this multipools are going to grow, we're gonna have much more rapid hash rate power adjustments, and much more dramatic adjustments for the difficulties of the altcoins.
I see it essentially the same as not many people were possibly mining back then, but back in 2011 there was all the pools were proportional, and there was pool hopping, where if one pool was paying higher rate per share because they had fewer shares, you would switch to that pool because it was more profitable, and then you switch back to the other pool when it was more profitable. And that was completely unsustainable, and I think it essentially applies the same way to this.
Yeah, and with the multi-pools, if those were to become prevalent, you would see the hash rate on the altcoins bouncing up and down, and they would eventually come to an equilibrium at an average hash rate. So I don't know that you would gain anything. The initial supporters of that would gain, but over time, it wouldn't provide any distinct advantage.
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's like any other arbitrage where it'll equalize the exchange rates of the various coins. I mean, over time, as long as there's volume.
Yes, sir. Could somebody hand him? Oh, sorry. So if you want to ask questions, just wait over there. Go ahead.
Hey, my name is Wu. I have a question for Luke, and I just want to know what's the status of the Eligius mining patty?
I think WizKid might have abandoned that project. It was based on BFL's old chips, and I don't think he ever finished it.
So I have a question about decentralizing mining. I assume you guys have heard of P2 pool. Can you explain to the audience what it is and what problems there are for using that to decentralize mining?
The main problem is that it doesn't scale very well. It's more closer to solo mining than most pool mining because you have a high variance. It reduces it a little bit, but it can't if you put the peer pool on for the whole network, it would only reduce it so much.
And it's also very difficult to set up and maintain. So you have to be pretty technical to operate a P2 pool node, unless you connect to a P2 pool, and then you're just connecting to a pool.
And there's also some hardware that can't handle it because it's actually a blockchain in itself. It's, in a sense, it's an altcoin, but it's got 10-second blocks. So every 10 seconds, your hardware has to be able to change to the next block on it, or else you lose it.
I wanted to comment on the coin switching pools. CoinIX.pw's had coin switching for probably a month or 6 weeks, and I've ported an entire Avalon at it. There are two things I see when I watch the statistics. One is that all the coins come to be very similar price, and I don't know if that's good or bad, but the price gets very level. I also see the what I would call a hash rate attack, the phenomenon of when difficulty gets really low, you get quite a bit of hash power. I see about 10 tera hash per second going now to the favorite coin, and then when it's not favored, it gets abandoned. So the time for the next difficulty change stretches out 30, 40, 60 days. So that's very evident right now if you look at the SHA 256 coins.
Is this a final question?
Yeah, so there's a script mining farm in China right now that's currently putting out 15.5 terahashes of script mining, and they're adding 500 megahashes a day. I wonder if any of you are aware of this or have any comments about it.
I'm not surprised.
It's enough to attack most altcoins. It's enough to have more than 51% of the computing power for most altcoins.
Yeah, but of course that's a good point you mentioned. But I mean, it's not in the interest of the miners to manipulate or use some kind of 51% attacks. So I think it's completely against the miners' goals. To affect the market in any negative sense. They want to be they want the best for the community, and they want the best for the community to grow, and for the economy, of course.
If they want the best for the community, then why would they just abandon a coin when it's no longer profitable? Also, one possible 51% attack would be to prevent people from depositing the altcoins to an exchange. And from there, they would be able to potentially keep the price higher until they sell themselves.
Well, yeah. But the problem of that is, of course, that, I mean, if it gets known, it would have a bad reputation of all of the whole mining community, and the prices would probably drop.
That would require, however, that it become known and that someone is able to identify who is doing it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. But I think sooner or later, if someone is doing it, the community will know that.
I don't see any way that they would be identified.
All right.
I think we can keep it at that. This brilliantly illustrates the vibrant discussion culture we have in the Bitcoin mining space. Thanks so much, all the panelists.
Okay.
I mean, if you have time, I have more questions.
I don't know. Okay.
Okay,
So
so
we have a final question.
Yeah. So the economist brought this up. I didn't hear a question about this. For our regular users of Bitcoin, the purpose of mining is to process transactions, and we're getting so many new users that we're running up against the limit. So he suggested we raise the block size. What do you guys think about solving this problem?
I don't really see it as being a problem. It's an arbitrary limit, and it's pretty much imposed by the miners not wanting to risk an orphan block. It's not a technical limit, and there's many ways around that. The easiest, most brute force method would be to pad the blocks so they're all 1 megabyte. So there's no incentive to make a block with less than the most amount of transactions you can pack into it. But there's also many other more elegant solutions that can be done. So I wouldn't really worry about that as a long-term problem.
Gavin had some ideas in mind. I don't know that it's really an issue until we actually start hitting that 1 megabyte limit. Most blocks are still less than half of a megabyte. The biggest mining pool, gigahash.io, intentionally mines really tiny blocks just to save on their bandwidth. I think it would definitely be would give us a lot of information to actually see it happening with every block being 1 megabyte.
They actually put in smaller blocks because it's actually more profitable. Just in case there's another one who finds a competing solution, they propagate through the network faster, and they win and they get the mining reward.
So as there are more users, transaction fees have to go up in order to get transactions in the blockchain, and yeah, as you said, there's a limit to how big of a block you want to make, based on the risk of getting an orphan block versus getting the extra transaction fees. And right now the transaction fees are very tiny, so you know, they're not very important. But as there are more users and the transaction fees go up,
And the block reward.
right, then eventually those transaction fees are going to become the difference between a profit and a loss getting into mining. And that's going to be a very good thing for Bitcoin overall, because right now the mining industry resembles like a land grab, when the miners are really supposed to be service providers. They're sort of the accountants. So once those transaction fees become the difference between a profit and a loss, then the miners are going to be more focused on being service providers. And that'll also be an incentive to increase the block size as well.
Great point. Okay, thank you.